All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I have to have my mirror by me so that I can look straight into the mirror. And I get close to the mirror. So if you got a handheld mirror, you're going to look close because I'm looking at my eye shape. Now, the first thing that I want to pay attention to with the eye shape is I'm kind of looking at the corners of the eyes. And I'm imagining when I look at this, if I were to take a pencil line and draw it straight across, does the inside corner of the eye line up with the outside corner or not? You will find a lot of times people draw what I call football eyes, which is they just draw the eye like, okay, I'm drawing an eye. This is the whole right brain, left brain thing. And they don't look at what they're drawing, and they just draw an eye like that. Well, a lot of times, I would say like 80% of the time when I'm looking at people's eyes, the outside corner actually sits higher than the inside corner. It doesn't always, but it does sometimes. So the first thing I'm really looking for is that relationship between the inside corner of my eye and the outside corner of my eye. And I'm going to represent that relationship on the page with 2 dots. So for me, I've drawn my eye a lot of times. Mine are fairly straight across. Their outside might be slightly higher. So I'm going to fill the box with this eye. It's going to be a larger than life eye. That's where I'm going to make the inside corner of my eye. And then if I go straight across and maybe just up a little bit, mine are fairly straight across. But a lot of people, the outside is much higher. So once I've sort of figured out that relationship, then I'm going to draw the line that is the top of the eye. And so for me, kind of comes out a little bit straight and angles up. And you're going to notice my initial marks are a little more square, kind of like setting up a construction drawing. And I'm paying attention to where this curve starts to happen. For some people, that curve that is their eye, let me see, I've got some other examples here. For some people, the curve is like right in the middle, like it has a more gradual curve. For some people, it has a curve that goes up, like if we look at these guys here. This guy, his curve happens right here on the inside. Hers is more in the middle. Sometimes it looks a little more towards the outside. So you're kind of paying attention to where the highest point of that eye is. For me, it's like right here. And then from there, I'm going to angle down. So I'm paying attention to, and that's why I draw it kind of square at first, is I just kind of want to figure out when does it go up, when does it go over, when does it go down. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the lower eye. But one thing I want to point out is that the lower eyelid tends to be a little bit more straight across than the upper eyelid. And if you're not going to get that football eye, I see tons of people, this is what I call the football eye, and they make the lower lid and the upper lid just as curvy as each other, and they're usually not. And here's one of the reasons why. When I am looking at my eye and I come out from, this is like with the inside corner, this is the tear duct here. It tends to come out a little bit straight right here by the tear duct. And then if it curves, it's very, very slight. So the eye is asymmetrical. A football is symmetrical. Remember those words from when we did still life. So for me, my upper eyelid curves towards the tear duct. If I draw that line there, I can see that I'm representing the inside corner. And the lower eyelid curves down here. And then the next line I'm going to look at is the crease in the eye. So as I'm looking, let's look at these guys. The crease in the eye, right? So that's this line here. Now, one of the things that I warn students about when they're drawing the eyes is, I don't know if it's the people like anime or what it is, but one of the huge things I see all the time is that people draw eyes way too big. And it's partially due to this opening and not making the lower lid straight. But it's partially too, I think there's just something like psychological that happens, that people kind of look at this crease mark when they really should be looking at this mark right here. So we just drew these marks. Now we're going to add this onto the top. So the eye is generally skinnier than one thinks, and then when you add this crease, it makes it feel the correct size. So let me look one more time. So with her crease, it kind of fades in slow. I can see the end of it. I can see the whole thing all the way to the end here. When I look at this guy, I can't see the crease at all right here. It doesn't pop out until this moment right here, and then I just see the little ending bit. Her crease is really, she's wearing makeup too, but it's thicker at this point, and it's an arch, but I don't see that much here. So you're seeing that there's differences in the eyes and how that crease occurs. So don't just draw a generic crease, look in the mirror and pay attention to how much of yours you see. So for me, I can see that. And then it kind of disappears. For mine, it kind of disappears behind my eye. And then it pops out again a little bit on this end. So I kind of am missing that middle part. Move it over so I'm not in the shadow. So for mine, and again, I'm drawing kind of square, because I'm trying to get those angles right. So once I've gotten the main structure of the outline or the contour of the eye, then I'm going to start filling in the iris, and the iris is the colored part. Now we're only working with pencil, so the color is going to be the same. It's going to be a value instead of necessarily a color. But the colored part of the eye is the iris, and then the small part inside is the pupil. Okay, so I'm going to look at this iris, and there's a couple of things to pay attention to. First of all, this is the spot where it's really important you look straight into your mirror, because if you look down into your mirror, or if you're looking like down into your phone when you take the picture, you're going to see more white underneath, and you don't want to see a lot of white. You want it to look like you're looking straight on. So the first thing I'm going to look at when I'm looking straight is, do I see any white underneath the eye at all? And if so, how much? This one has a little more than this one. This guy's, I really don't see white. It just kind of skims the bottom of his lower eyelid. So there's that. And then the second thing I'm going to be looking for is the sides. So I'm looking at negative space here. When I look at the eye, my eye, and I'm looking straight in my mirror, is the amount of white on this side equal to the amount of white on this side? Here's an example where she has a lot more white on the inside corner of her eye versus the outside. She has a little bit more equal. And a lot of times, I don't see an example here, but a lot of times there's, well, right here, she's got a little bit more, well, she's got more white on the inside too, but sometimes you'll get it the opposite way. So there's a little more white here, like this guy, a little more white here and a little less here. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to look cross-eyed. You're still going to be looking straight, but you have to look at your own eye to decide. And then I'm going to take those things into account, and I'm going to draw this circle. Now, a lot of my upper iris gets cut off, but for me, just a little bit of the lower. So I start real sketchy to get that placed correctly. And I want it to look round. You have to remember that if you opened your eyes really wide, the rest of the iris is there. It's just kind of getting cut off, right? So this should be a complete circle, not straight edges on the side. Complete circle. Then comes the pupil. So the pupil is the black part in the eye. And there's some rules with the pupil because the pupil can change sizes. So the size of the pupil will change depending on the lighting situation you're in. If you're in a dark room, your pupil opens up wider so that it can let in more light. If you are in a bright room, it gets smaller so that it lets less light in. Now, in order to make yourself look normal and not like you just took a trip to the eye doctor and had your eyes dilated, right? You want the pupil to fit inside the eye, and my rule of thumb is that it should fit 3 times across. That's one rule. The other thing is you need to make sure that even though the iris, or the colored part of the eye, gets cut off, the pupil does not. You need to see the whole circle. If you draw this part cut off, you look like you're gonna pass out, right? It just looks weird because you're getting part of your vision cut off. Your entire pupil will be seen because that's how you see. So I look at this circle and I'm trying to draw another circle inside of the full circle. And as I draw the size of that, I want to kind of imagine that I'm drawing it the size that I can fit 3 of them across. So it should not be getting cut off, and I should fit 3 across. Those are the same rules no matter who. Scooch over here a little bit. Okay, so now we've drawn all the sort of the lines of the eye. So we're going to move into drawing just a super light outline of the eyebrow. Okay, so I'm going to look again at my eyebrow and I'm going to see, does it curve? Where does it curve? If I were to draw a line straight from the curve of my eyebrow, it actually does not curve until it hits almost the end of my eye. And another thing I look at is the length of my eyebrow, because people have a tendency when they're not really paying attention to draw the eyebrow the exact same length as the eye. And then it looks weird and small. It's too small. So when I'm looking in the mirror, I'm going to look for where the curve is. I'm going to look for where it starts in relationship to the corners of the eye. So from the inside corner, it's a little bit longer. And then from the outside corner, it's a lot longer here. So those are the 3 things I'm going to be paying attention to: the curve and the length in comparison to my actual eye. The other thing I didn't really mention, but I am kind of looking at how much skin I see between the crease and the eyebrow. Some people's eyebrows are lower, but for me, like, I see more skin here. But like this guy, I hardly see any skin at all in between. So the length of my eyebrow is probably like off the page even, over here. The curve of my eyebrow hits at about that point. So I'm going to lightly just draw a contour, super light outline of where I'm going to place that eyebrow for me. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. We're doing good. We will fill it in with hair soon. Okay, so we have the contours of the eye, the iris, the pupil, the eyelid, the eyebrow. If you haven't already put in the tear duct, you can do that. If you want to get fancy, you can draw in a double thickness. Sometimes you see what people refer to as the water line down here. So if you want to add in that double thickness, if you see it, you can add that. My students taught me that that was called the water line. I think that's a makeup term. So if you don't know it, don't feel bad. And now I'm going to start shading. So the first thing I'm going to shade is the pupil. Oh wait, let me go back. Let me go back a step. Before we start shading the pupil, this example is probably a little bit better. I do want to pay attention to where I see reflections in the eye. So I know this one has glasses, but underneath the glasses you can see that there's some bright spots, right? There's some little pops of light. And those pops of light are going to take place all over the eye because your entire eye is a shiny surface. If you just shade it in and you don't have that little pop of highlight, your eyes don't look shiny, bright, glossy. So I'm going to kind of look in the mirror and see where I kind of see those highlights. And for me, well, I'm using this lighted mirror, so I'm getting that circle look in my eye. But I'm not going to draw it all. I'm just going to do parts. So I see this. I'm going to leave that alone. But they can fall in the white of the eye. They can fall in across the pupil. They can be in different spots. So I'm just going to mark some places that I intend to leave as bright reflections. And then once I have those, I'm going to shade in the pupil. Now the pupil is always black. It is literally a hole into your head. So that's just going to be dark. I don't love the way that my pencil is sharpened right now. I'm going to turn this off and see if this is better. I don't know which lighting situation is better. Maybe that one. And then you're going to shade in the iris. So people have different colored eyes, and therefore it's a different value. If you have brown eyes, sometimes it's so dark you really can hardly even make out where the pupil is, and they kind of blend together. Other times it's a lighter brown and you can see your pupil a little bit. And other times people have light eyes and you can really, really see where that pupil is. The other thing is with light eyes is there's a ring around the iris here. And this is with everybody, light or dark. That tends to be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to darken that. And then my eyes are really dark. In fact, they're so dark, I really can't see the pupil very much. So I'm going to be conscious of these areas that I wanted to keep as reflections. And then I'm going to go, and I like to use like sort of what is a hatching mark, which means shading with lines, because it adds a little bit of texture. So I'll give it a couple passes. Now, I do not want it to look like stripes. If you follow this hatching thing and you make it too stripy, it's going to look like your eye's a bike tire with spokes coming out of it. So easy on that. If your eyes are light, maybe then you're done with just that first pass and you give just like a light value to the whole thing. If your eyes are darker, you can go back, and I'm going to rip this page out because I want to draw straight on the table. The sketchbook is padding, creating like a pad for it, so I can't make as dark of a mark. So if you're trying to get dark marks and you want to draw on like a notebook or something instead, or a tabletop, you can do that. Okay, so then, next thing is, after I've shaded that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shade the eye, the white part of the eye. And people always say, like, what? Why would you shade the white part of the eye? Like, it's white. Well, no, it's not. It's actually a sphere. Like, if you take your eyeball out of your head, it's what I say, it's an eyeball, not an eye pancake. So it's round. It's a sphere. It's not flat. And so we need to show the shadows to make that a sphere. So if you look at this more finished sample here, you'll see shadows in a couple of places. The white actually is right up here close to the iris, and I'm going to use, if my ground is particularly dark, I'm going to use my eraser to pull some brightness out right there, but then I'm going to create a gradation right down to the corner of the eye, and I'll do the same thing on the inside corner to make that look spherical. And the other thing you're going to make a shadow is a light right along the top lid here. There's it's like your skin almost has like a cut in it, so there's a thickness to the skin. So you actually get a slight cast shadow right along the top part of your eye here. So if my ground is really, really dark, I'm going to go in, I don't have a very good eraser on this pencil, and erase out some brightness. My ground is not all that dark. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to gradually add some shadow to the corners, right up to the tear duct. Same on the other side. Now this is the part where if you really want to use a blending stick, you can. I don't use a blending stick on the eye. I use it on the nose mostly, sometimes on the lip. I tend to try to just use my pencil here, but if you want to, and you want to get a nice soft gradation, you can use that blending stick a little bit. And then I'm going to take this shadow right across the top. Soft shadow, thick shadow right across the top. That's going to be the cast shadow. So now it's starting to look more spherical. The last thing I'm going to pay attention to is I made a little mark right here as to where I wanted this reflection to go. So I don't want to see that outlined. So I might have to lighten my marks. And then just kind of go back around it and add some gray tone so that I can see that it looks shiny and reflective. And then for the tear duct there, instead of leaving it just white, I usually don't fill in all the way. I leave it slightly reflective. So I just kind of go back and shade, but not leave little white spots. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to finish the eyebrow today, and then tomorrow we're going to talk about, because this one is, if you can see, there's more highlights. We're to start talking about bone structure and how your cheekbones and your brow bones and the bridge of your nose become shadows, and then those things start looking like they're actually sitting in the face. So we'll do that part tomorrow, and we'll do glasses tomorrow, but today let's do the eyebrow real quick. So now that we've got the contour of the eyebrow and we know where it goes, we're going to fill it in with hairs. So as I begin to look at the eyebrow, and I'm looking in the mirror, I notice that the hair in the inside corner of my eye grows up. As I get to the top, though, of the eyebrow and I look, it changes direction. It starts growing sideways, and from the top, it actually grows down. So as I fill that in, it's going to start looking kind of thin. And again, it depends like how your eyebrows are. If you like pluck your eyebrows, you're going to have a real neat line. If you don't, you may have a stray hair here and there, which if you do, you should show them. some eyebrows don't have those clean marks, and they're a little like softer and blurrier. So don't make your eyebrow like my eyebrow. Make it like your eyebrow. So after I kind of fill it in with one pass, then the thing I notice is that the center part of the eyebrow tends to be the darkest part. Here where it attaches to the skin, I can see some skin, like some skin in between, but when the stuff comes down from the top and up from the bottom and it crisscrosses over in the middle, the center part tends to be a little bit denser, and therefore it tends to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go back in. Especially over the middle part and the thicker part, and add more hairs. And I don't want to see that original contour line that I drew. That was just a guide for me to know where to put the hairs. But at this point, I should start filling it in so that I don't see that line.